My name's Tom Ross, and welcome to the Honest Entrepreneur Show, where I'm bringing you tried and tested advice to help your online business without any of the bullshit. This week, I'm talking about regurgitated advice and putting out your truth. So this is a really important topic, which I think about all the time. And when you look at this show, it's called the Honest Entrepreneur Show. So you can tell this theme is very near and dear to my heart. In the intro of this show, I talk about none of the bullshit. And the fact is, there is an awful lot of bullshit out there. There's so many people who are just repeating other people's advice. They're regurgitating these cliches and stuff they hear elsewhere that they haven't really lived and experienced. And I think this is a huge problem. I know it's a problem because I used to do it myself. Let's rewind a bunch of years. When I was a freelance designer, I have certainly been guilty of positioning myself as this kind of globo-corp entity, when really it was me, 15 years old, sat there in my boxer shorts trying to make my way as a freelance designer. And the reason this is so damaging is because anyone who is switched on to any capacity can see through that bullshit a mile off. There are no good quality clients out there that are going to see this 15-year-old kid's website and think, oh man, this global corporation are just what we need for our design gig. You know, the whole thing was a facade. It was a mirage, and it was complete and utter nonsense. And I did this in various capacities, like many of us. It wasn't that I was trying to be disingenuous or sleazy or lie. I think it was really stemming from a lack of confidence in myself and in my skills. So I felt embarrassed to not be more established as a professional, as a designer in this case, and therefore I'd try and make out to be something that I wasn't. And in a similar vein, I remember I started a Photoshop blog. This did go on to be pretty popular, but then I incorrectly presumed I was this kind of marketing blogging expert. And at the time, I definitely wasn't. I actually did a spin-off section of this more successful blog where I said to everyone, I'm going to be teaching you all about marketing. And then I put out some of the worst marketing advice and articles of all time. I remember going on large Twitter users at the time, and I would find their profiles, and then I would write these long articles about the strategies they were employing. And one of these pains me to this day. I went on these big accounts and I looked at how frequently they were posting, and then I organized that into a kind of graph and basically said, and you can see the average number of tweets per day is 3. And that's the reason why they have 745,000 Twitter followers. It must be the posting frequency. And I wrote this big essay about how if you're sharing once a day, it's not enough. And if it's 5 times, it's too many, because 3.2 seems to be the magic number from these big accounts, because I found an average stat on the back of my research. Obviously, this is ludicrous. You know, that's not the reason why they had 745,000 Twitter followers. And at the end of the day, having 745,000 Twitter followers equally doesn't give you a business, certainly not right as a direct result of that. So the reality, unfortunately, was I didn't know what the hell I was talking about, but I was doing what so many of us do. I was purporting to be better and more experienced than I actually was. I was putting out advice. In this form, it might not have been regurgitated, but it was pretty terrible. And that's because I'd see similar articles talking about vanity metrics and stats. And I thought, yeah, I can do that. You know, this isn't too hard. And so I just put out this misinformation. And it pains me now to think there were people that probably read that and went away, and instead of focusing on what they should have been focusing for their business, started doing less tweets a day, thinking that was like the magic bullet because that's what I positioned it to be. And the whole thing is just so embarrassing to think back about. And so now I don't massively judge, to be honest, when I see younger, less experienced people doing this. I see them repeating bad advice. I see them putting out stuff as expertise, which is clearly nonsense. And I can't judge them because that was me. However, equally, I want to shake them and say, please stop doing that and share your truth. And I think that is what's so important. We can only share what we've done. We can only share our own experiences. We can't and shouldn't share anything else. Look at this show, for example, and all the content I put out. I only talk about what I've either done or what I'm doing. And if it's something that I'm doing, I'm not making out like I'm the world's foremost expert. I'm sharing the journey of figuring it out. I'm saying, here's what I'm kind of experimenting with right now. And it may not work or it may, but here's my hypothesis. And I'm just sharing that with the world to document it. But there's a ton of stuff that I can't talk about. For example, I can't talk about running a team of 100 people. But I can talk about running a team of 20. I can't talk about being the CEO of a huge corporation. I can't talk about how to be better with my taxes or be a superstar accountant. I can't talk about how to do PPC advertising like an absolute genius. I can't talk about a lot of things. But what I can talk about is what I've done and what I'm doing. I can talk about a lot of elements of marketing. I can talk about branding and design because I worked as a freelancer for a lot of years. I did branding and design for a lot of people. I've critiqued 500 plus websites in my time. I've acted as consultant for dozens and dozens of people, and I've achieved some really consistent, really big results. So I know I can talk about that stuff, and I should be talking about it confidently because I actually have the experience and expertise to back that up. And this is one of the main reasons why I'm quite late releasing this content around my personal brand. It's because I was obsessed with the idea of credibility. I didn't want anyone to perceive me as a charlatan. I wanted to build up a multi-7-figure business. I wanted to build out a team. I wanted to actually have experience and some chops behind what I was saying. Because if I sat here and tried to teach you how to grow a business and I was some guy sat in my bedroom and I hadn't really done it at any kind of scale, then I shouldn't be teaching that stuff. And I think so many people could benefit from either being patient or better yet, just sharing where they're at in their journey. Because I guarantee where you're at will be of some value and benefit to other people. You don't need to be a complete expert. You don't need to have it all figured out. The fact that you're 2 steps ahead of someone who's just starting could be huge. You might not say you've got all the answers, but you can say, well, I was where you were 2 months ago, and here's the trial and error and stumbling blocks and things that I figured out in those 2 months. I hope that helps you. That can be enough. Just whatever you do, don't try and pretend to be something you're not. And I think in a busy social world and a very, very competitive marketing world, this has to be the answer because I feel like raw truth is what cuts through. I've seen that with this show starting to happen, and I've definitely seen it with my other podcast, The Honest Designers Show. The fact that we talk about the very raw, very transparent stuff that other people aren't willing to share cuts through the noise. We're not just repeating some soundbite or some meme that we heard or read. We're actually sharing things like mental health, creative block, isolation, the stuff that we've lived for most of our adult lives. And people resonate with it because it's real, because it's the truth. And it's our truth, it's not someone else's. So please don't be embarrassed about who you are or where you're at in your journey. There's nothing to be ashamed of about that, but there is shame in giving shitty advice that can potentially damage other people. So to dig a little bit deeper into this concept, how do you present yourself? Because I can already hear the questions firing back on the back of this episode. It's like, but I don't want to appear like an amateur or a novice or something like that. And I think there's a difference between showing the best version of you and purporting to be someone else. So here's what I mean by that. I don't think you should be honest to the point of just being the most insecure, vulnerable person on earth. There's a time and place for that, and I do express that in this show, but hopefully from a position of bringing value. If, for example, you're trying to attract clients, you can and should be honest in your content marketing, but you don't need to be there being like, my knees were trembling when I talked to you on the phone, and this whole thing makes me want to be sick, and this is horrible, but that's my truth, and pitching's really terrible and gives me anxiety. That may well be the truth, but that's probably not going to get you a lot of clients. So instead, what you can do is bring your best self. So imagine you're on a first date. You're not going to be bringing this weird, insecure version of you, hopefully. You're going to be trying to show off your best side. You're going to dress nicely. You're going to try and be as confident and interesting and engaging as possible. And you should do the same thing in your content. So you might not have to share every facet of yourself, but you certainly can pick out the bits you feel you are better versed in. You can share the stuff you're more of an expert in, or passionate about, or interested in, or excited to share with the world. That's absolutely fine. What you don't need to do is pretend to be Slick Rick down the road just because he's got 10 times the amount of followers that you do, and so you're going to try and fit your bigger feet into his small shoes. It's uncomfortable. So just to give you something to think about and kind of try on the back of this episode, go away and please try and think, what is one way that I can share my truth? What is one way that I can actually share my truth? Fuck me. What is one way that I can share my truth? And Marco, please leave the other versions of that in. I'm going to do case in point. I just repeated myself 3 times because a motorbike drove past as we're recording this. It's super loud and it may or may not have disrupted the audio. And it's frustrating. And we're sat in a warm office right now, and the window is covered up with this huge sheet so the lighting looks okay for YouTube. And I can't wait until we move to our new office in July, because we're going to have a dedicated filming space, right? It's going to be amazing. We don't have to get set up and down. We can just sit down and film. It's going to be soundproof, perfect lighting every time. It's going to be a game changer and let us ship a lot more content volume. And the reason I'm sharing this now is because that's something that just happened. That doesn't make me like weak or insecure or less of an expert. I'm sharing a little moment of truth in my content. I'm not trying to be like this super slick marketing person, because that's a load of crap. And I think that's something we can all benefit from, right? So look at your content strategy right now and just think, am I putting out stuff that I don't fully believe in? Can I 100% stand by what I'm saying? Or do I secretly feel a little bit full of shit? And work out what are the pockets of content you're sharing where you can stand by it. You know what you're talking about. You've got the passion. You've done it. Double down on that stuff, because I promise over time you'll see more traction in it than if you're just regurgitating some other person's. I really hope this was helpful. Honestly, I got some of these lessons from former business mentors. It was like a big reframing in my mind, because I was super guilty of a lot of this nonsense. And when you do it, like, it should feel pretty liberating. It certainly was for me, because it brought quite a lot of stress, like trying to have to purport to be something bigger than myself. And so it was really freeing when I could actually just own who I am, what I know, and what I'm all about. And so I wish that for all of you, and good luck. And as always, I really appreciate you guys tuning in, and I'll see you next time. Hey, thanks so much for watching this episode. Really, really appreciate you being here with me. If you haven't yet, please do subscribe right here on YouTube. Remember, tick the little bell icon so that you get proper notifications. I really hope you're enjoying the show. I hope you'll stick around for the upcoming episodes. I really want to keep bringing you as much value as possible. So thank you so much for your time, and I'll see you guys soon.